Mr. Mayor. I know we have received a memo tonight, update on the CAD2CAD. I'd like to use my time for the comments to ask the city manager to give us a briefing on the CAD2CAD update.
You want to do that for 6 or 7?
I'm sorry?
6 o'clock is good.
Do it 6, 7, 8. Thank you, Councilman Knoll. First off, let me explain. Typically, we do have a CAD2CAD update. We did have a test of the system on I don't have the date in front of me, at the end of February, a center-to-center testing call. And we have been working on evaluating the results of that test and planned on making a update at the March 24th meeting. But due to public interest and some of the information we've gotten clarity on now, we'll bring that to you tonight. And the items have been added to the packet, so they're available on the web as well. We've included a copy of the memorandum update in the back of the room. Additionally, you have a letter in front of you that is not part of the package, but I'll go over that in a second with the council. On the update, center-to-center testing call was completed at the end of February and revealed 4 challenges that came up during the part of the testing that would prevent us from going live. All 4 of those issues have been analyzed by all of the parties involved, are in various stages of being fixed, so the system can be retested, and we'll be able to go back to the testing to bring the system live. So it was an unexpected glitch in the programming. We've identified that all 4 of the issues that came out through the testing were a result of programming that related to Interact, which is the CAD vendor that's on the DeKalb side. So we've narrowed down to those issues at this point. And what I wanted to do was kind of talk through with the council a little bit, some clarifications on some of the things that we've heard for the council and for the public, and to kind of explain a little bit better the situation that we have at hand. And I think the way to explain this is that it's not your traditional software development project. So the city does those types of projects fairly regularly, where we go ahead and we hire a software vendor to write code or to provide us with a software package to implement into our systems. We hire that person, we give them the explicit instructions on what we want to accomplish, deadlines to meet, a specific cost that they have to meet to bring that to fruition, and then we manage that either through our in-house technology folks, or we utilize an outside project consultant as necessary, depending on the complexity of the systems that we're looking at. What we have here is a little bit different. What we have here is 2 vendors, neither of which are under contract for their base services to the city. So you've got Interact, which is the CAD vendor for DeKalb County, and OSSI SunGuard, which is the CAD vendor for CAD2CAD. And what we're asking them to do is to allow the information from the caller to be entered into the OSSI CAD system and then electronically translated into the same database fields in the CAD system with Interact. And that's the interface is the piece of equipment in the middle, which translates from one CAD vendor to the other. So the city does not have a piece of software that it is using on any of our systems. These are systems, these impact those particular systems, which are outside of our control. And those vendors, their ultimate contracts, the big money contracts, are with the CADCOM 911 Center and the DeKalb 911 Center. And one of the things that we did look at, it was suggested, which was a very good suggestion, that since we have 2 disparate CAD systems, that a third party may be able to come in, write code between those two, and be ultimately responsible for developing that interface. We did approach a third-party CAD vendor to do that when we initially started the project. They agreed to do the work for us. We went to the vendors to work out the details on that interface. And both the vendors at that time told us that they had no interest in providing their proprietary code to the third-party vendor to be able to develop it. So in other words, you couldn't hire the third-party vendor if the two CAD vendors, OSSI and Interact, wouldn't provide their code to develop into. So what they did is they did a software development agreement between the two CAD vendors. So those are the roadmap to meet in the middle. Interact took the primary lead in developing the interface and was not provided OSSI's code, but provided certain requirements to make it accessible for the translation. So it's a little bit of semantics, but I think part of the frustration from the public, certainly part of the frustration from our staff is that we don't have someone that we've hired that we can fire because they didn't do a good job for us. We have other parties that we have to be able to move in the right direction. It's not an excuse. We want the project to be completed and it's taken too long to get done. And I'll certainly take responsibility for my role in that. But I want to make sure that y'all understand the specific distinctions in those two philosophies. We do have a letter that I put before you that we sent today to John McNulty, who's President and CEO of Interact. And basically paraphrasing the letter is it explains the frustrations that I have and the City Council and the public has with how long the project has taken, and that after this many years that there are still bugs in the system of something that they had a responsibility to program properly to work. They agreed to the joint software development regulations, and the system after this amount of time should not still be in testing mode, it should be completed, and certainly there's a level of frustration there. The suggestion of council, we've also invited, or we'll be inviting Interact to come to hopefully the March 24th council meeting and be able to directly answer any questions that y'all may have at that time. Be happy to answer any questions. Certainly we're disappointed that the last test didn't prove to be the final test and that there are some challenges to work through, none of which are insurmountable. But this late in the game, our hope will be there would be no more issues to work through, no more bugs, no more unexpected challenges, and that the programming would have been done properly enough to be able to be completed this time. I'd be happy to answer any questions that y'all may have.
As a follow-up to that, in your memo, you cite 4 items that failed the test, and that test was Friday, February 28th. I believe I heard in a prior update since the 28th that those 4 issues were as a result of the CAD upgrade that DeKalb installed, and that then the test that we ran after that was a result of that CAD update. You mentioned that actually in the first item. It's not mentioned in the other 3, but I was told that. Is that correct? Is it related to the CAD system update that DeKalb installed?
I believe so.
So the tests had been working flawlessly prior to that upgrade.
Yeah, so they did have the vendor-to-vendor testing, which is a little different than the center-to-center testing, in that the center-to-center testing is conducted by the center personnel. So in the vendor-to-vendor testing, which was done prior to the upgrade to the CAD software on the DeKalb side, was working. All the tests that we had there showed all fields were flawlessly moving over. So I think it's a reasonable assumption that the update that was done on the system produced some unexpected results that need to be worked through.
Anybody?
I'm curious, and it's really water under the bridge at this point, but when we started this project and you reached out, was there no discussion of either Interact or OSSI of a non-disclosure clause?
Yeah,
and they wouldn't agree to a non-disclosure clause? Because that's pretty
initially
typical.
There was some agreement that they would be comfortable with the process of moving in with a third-party vendor.
Right.
As we got into the details of what codes they would be having to share and the details that they decided that neither party wanted to pursue that any further, even with the proper legal arrangements put in place to protect them.
So, because I've only been asking about a consultant for a couple of years, and that's sort of the first I'd heard of that barrier to using one.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's sort of two, I don't want to read into what you're
Right.
saying, but there's sort of two ways that you would use a consultant.
Right.
One would be to actually do the project for
Right.
you, and then the second would be to
Manage.
watch over your interests.
Right,
as we move forward.
and truthfully, I was really talking about, at that point, watching over our interests in getting this thing done. My concern amongst 1,000 that I have is that we're not paying Interact anything. And we're really, it really is DeKalb County that needs to be putting pressure on Interact, I think. I mean, it's nice we wrote this letter, and it's nice that we invited them to come to the meeting. I bet they don't show. But it's, the struggle I'm having is what, we've got to find a way to get DeKalb County to leverage their relationship with Interact, right? Because we don't pay them anything, is that correct?
No,
Or do we pay
the
Interact?
relationship we have is that we will be compensating them for their efforts.
Okay.
We have not paid them anything yet.
Oh,
And we will not be paying them until
Right.
we have a product that works. So that's, I mean,
That is better.
we're talking $65,000, $70,000.
Yeah, that's
It's
not gonna- right.
Not big money. And I think part of the challenge, frankly, is that DeKalb has put out an RFP for CAD services.
Uh-huh.
Or I don't know if they put it out yet, but they're in the process of moving forward with that. You can look at that two ways. One is that's good incentive to want to win the business, and the second one is if they already have the business and they're bidding it out, that may be a sign that,
right,
I don't know, that's sort of reading the tea leaves outside of my pay grade.
right.
But also, just wanted to clarify, just to make sure that we're on the same page, is that Interact has not failed to show up for me. We have not
Right.
yet invited them.
No, I know.
Okay, I just wanna make
I'm
sure.
skeptical that we just don't have very much, and even the amount of money that they're due
Right.
us is not big dollars in the world of IT consulting. And so, do we have any sense that Interact is working right now to address these?
Yes, and I will say on a positive front, all of the parties,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, are working diligently to try to come to the end of this process. I think they are nowhere near as frustrated as we are, but certainly are ready to be done with the project. And there's a business reputation issue as well, in that they don't want to be associated with a failed project because they do business with a lot of different cities, and certainly the press generated by this project has not been positive for the vendors involved in it. So I do get the distinct impression that they're all motivated and trying to move in the right direction. What I think the letter to Interact is one is a recognition that regardless of how much effort putting forward now, product doesn't work, and it needs to. And it should have a long time before this, not just here forward. And then also, if the letter has any impact on providing them with any additional resources other than what they're already using, that'd be a benefit to us to move this along even faster than we're moving now.
And then what are the next steps? Let's presume, with some optimism, that they fix these 4 issues in the next week or so. Then where are we?
We're right back at the stage where we do a center-to-center test
Okay,
and then determine whether or not, and what the center-to-center test does is they throw all varieties of calls at the system.
Right.
They run them through to try to determine if there are any more bugs in the system. And, on the optimistic front, if you go through the center-to-center testing and it passes without any additional issues, at that point, the TAC has agreed to go ahead and move it forward. And the ChatCom board has also told us they don't actually need to meet. That once the TAC is satisfied that the test was sufficient, that they will just go ahead and there's no action they'll need to take.
and on a slightly different subject but related, my understanding is there's been a personnel change in Johns Creek, and he sat on the board of ChatCom. Do I have that correct?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
this-
sir.
Yeah, that's okay, it works either way. What impact does that have? Does it have any impact on these kind of decisions? Certainly not in the short term, correct?
No, there's no issue on
Can we
the
have their board seat?
leadership.
From Hawaii.
It's been
Well,
filled.
no.
So John Keckmore, the former city manager in Johns Creek, who resigned, was with a sitting board member. There's a requirement on their board that you have to live within the
Oh,
district of the board that seat that you fill.
Okay.
So they've appointed Grant Hickey, who's on their staff, to that board seat in the interim period until they make a more permanent board assignment.
all right.
So,
And
yeah,
s-
but I think, we have their agreement already, so
Okay.
it's not critical. We didn't lose anything.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Just a follow-up, I know there was a meeting of TAC that was to have been last week, and I believe what TAC was to do was to say the test had been successful. Obviously, it wasn't. Will TAC have to meet again? Let's say we go to this next step that you outline, the center-to-center testing. So the Interact completes its bugs, center-to-center testing works fine. Will this have to go to TAC again before we move to training and going live with this?
Yes, there needs to be the step from the time that the test is completed, and the TAC will have a special call meeting that can be called within 24 hours. And what we've done in the past, and we'll do again, is once the date of the center-to-center test is set, we set the TAC meeting for directly after that, so that there's not a time loss between the two events. Maybe a day or so, but it's not going to be considerable. And then the TAC will just need to be able to say, affirmatively, yes, this test worked. IXP and all of the center personnel are telling us that it's ready to go live. We're in week less.
I have one quick question. Right now, Doraville and Chamblee have their own police station and their own 911, and then transfer the calls to DeKalb for fire. So I guess that's that somebody talks to the Chamblee 911, gives information, then it gets transferred. How is that different from what we are doing now?
It's not fundamentally different. There is a slight distinction in that if you make a call into the Chatcom 911 center, the first thing that has to be determined, if it's not a landline call that automatically pulls up the information into the PSAP, the Primary Public Safety Answering Form. So in other words, if you call from a landline, immediately recognizes your address and which jurisdiction you're from. You call on a cell phone and they're not able to determine that through the computer, you've got to identify where you live, and then they verify location. So the distinction, which is not considerable, is that they've got to determine when you call the Chatcom whether you're in Johns Creek, Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, or if your call is coming from outside the service boundary altogether, it needs to be transferred to Atlanta or Cobb County, other than DeKalb. So you've got that distinction. Now the same distinction applies in Chamblee and Doraville, except it's a smaller amount of folks that you could be. In other words, if you're in Chamblee and you're calling on a cell phone, you're going to verify that yes, I'm from Chamblee and need Chamblee Police or DeKalb Fire. It's possible that you could be in Doraville, get bounced to the Chamblee 911 center, and then either have to be transferred back over to Doraville for a police call or to DeKalb for a fire call. So I think it's almost exactly the same procedure.
So how accurate nowadays is a cell tower to identifying where
It's
you are?
very good, but it's certainly not 100%.
Anybody else? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, let's move